What compelled a group of German immigrants in 1884 to undertake a 9-day journey from Denver to an area in San Diego that was known as Los Encinitas? Do you know where Olivenhain is or the history behind it? It's a small settlement in North San Diego County that was originally called Los Encinitas. I'm Ruth Birch with Pace TV. Today we're at the San Diego Heritage Museum where Richard and Twink Bumann are joining us. Hi, so glad you could join us today. We're here to tell you what happened when a group of colonists signed up to adventure to their promised land and how it all turned out. Richard and I are direct descendants of those original colonists, and Twink has been inspired by Richard's research to do her own, which she'll be sharing with us later. So let's step inside the museum to learn more.
Two brothers, Frank and Warren Kimball, own large areas of land, including National City, and up here in the North County, a Mexican rancho called Rancho Los Encinitas. They wanted to sell the rancho, and in fact had advertised to sell it to a colony. The reason they were selling to a colony is because during that period of time, between 1870 and 1910, more than 3.5 million Germans emigrated into the United States. Many of those joined a German colony, and together they had common language and customs, and together they became proud United States citizens. Because the colony was made up of a large number of people, each person within the colony would only feel a small impact of the total cost of the land. Therefore, the sale of large parcels of land to colonies was as lucrative to the landowner as it was essential to the colonist. The Kimball brothers advertised the Rancho Los Encinitas in many newspapers across the United States, including San Diego, Denver, Colorado, and Chicago. During that time, there were a number of people that answered the ad. One was from Denver, Colorado, a man by the name of Theodore Pinther. Mr. Pinther had expressed to the Kimballs that he would be willing to organize a German colony and move his settlement to the Rancho Los Encinitas sometime in 1884, if the right prices and terms could be agreed upon. Theodore Pinther and his close associate and colonist, Conrad Struble, went from Denver, Colorado to National City and talked to the Kimball brothers and made an agreement to buy the Rancho Los Encinitas, which was 4,400 acres. They signed a contract, and things were ready then for the colonists to come to their promised land.
That's really interesting, Richard. So how many colonists ended up actually coming, and how did they all get out here?
The colonists left Denver, Colorado in November 1884 aboard a train. They came across from Denver to Los Angeles by rail, and from Los Angeles, actually in San Pedro Bay, they went by steamer then down to San Diego, and from San Diego took another small train back up to Encinitas. From there, they had to walk to their promised land. The colonists arrived in Encinitas in late afternoon. They had to walk then the remaining 5 miles from the train station out to the rancho. The colonists then moved out to the adobe ruins, and that's where that became their new home. They were then on the promised land. They were required to work for the colony for at least 30 days, and therefore
free labor.
Free labor, oh yes. And they made various improvements in Olivenhain, for instance, taking the chaparral out, and they started to build homes. Those that couldn't afford a home had a shanty built.
Really? Mm-hmm. What would a size of a shanty been?
Shanty, there was 2 sizes of those. One was 12 by 14, and the other one was 14 by 16. My great-grandfather lived in a shanty from 1885 until his death in 1893.
Well, let's take a look at the cutaway they have here at the museum, and you can tell us more about that.
Okay.
Great. Richard, this is basically a cutaway of what an original shanty would have looked like.
It sure is. As you can see, it's very basic. Shanties were very popular because of financial reasons, and also fit the needs of bachelors. They usually had a stove, of course a bed, a place to keep their clothes, a little bit of a food supply, but they were very basic. I don't believe there was ever a family that actually lived in one of these with a wife and children or anything like that. This was basically a bachelor's home.
But now on the property, I understand there is an example of an original home that a family lived in. Is that
Yes,
correct?
there is.
Great.
There is.
Okay.
And I think we can go out and look at it now.
Okay, great. That's a good idea.
This house is one of the original houses that were built in 1885 by the colonists. It was used for a very short time by Theodore Pinther, and then after he was expelled from the colony, it was used again for a very short time, maybe a year or so, as a schoolhouse. Then in 1892, Fred Tayton and his family came and purchased it, and the Tayton family lived here for about 90 years.
Really?
That
And
long? I didn't realize.
That was a long time for them.
was.
Yes.
That really is a long time.
It's been moved from the original location to here, and now it's being restored.
Great. So I'd like to know more about then what happened to the original colonists when things didn't work out after they found out that Pinther had deceived them. Can you tell us what happened to the colonists after that?
You know, that's kind of a big story. So I was wondering if we could step over here and get into the shade.
Sounds like a good idea.
And we'll talk it over there.
All right, thanks, Richard. Let's go, Sage. All right, now I am curious, Richard, what happened to those original settlers?
After I wouldn't call it actually the total collapse of the colony system in 1885, but actually after Pinther left, the colony began a gradual disbanding of its policies, and most of the colonists were very disillusioned by what had happened, and by 1887, 80% of the colonists had fled the area. Some went back east, some went to the surrounding communities. Some homesteaded in the background,
What does that
in the
mean?
back hills.
What do you mean homestead?
There was government land still available,
Okay.
and just for occupying the land and making improvements to it, you could acquire 160 acres.
Oh,
And there was a number of those homesteads surrounding the colony settlement, and in fact the Canes did that.
oh, my grandmother's
The Bumann,
family.
yes, the Bumans, the Rasicks, the Wiggins. Quite a number of the people homesteaded.
Did the Coles homestead?
Yes, they did. Silas and Mary Cole homesteaded in about 1894 near Lone Jack Road. They, in fact, were neighbors to my grandparents, Herman and Emma Boone. Ruth, Twink, let's go on out to the meeting hall and let's meet up with Stanley Cole.
Okay.
Oh, that sounds like a good idea.
Come on, Sage, let's get in there. Okay, Sage, up, get up there.
Hey!
Hi, Ruth.
Hi,
How you
Stan!
doing?
Jeez,
Nice to
great
see you
to see
today,
you!
Yeah.
Hi, Stan. Good to see you.
Yeah, great. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Hi, Stan.
Made it.
Yeah, did.
Yeah,
Did. I
great.
had a hard time keeping up with you.
I know,
What
yeah.
year is that
Oh,
motorcycle?
1947.
Oh, 47.
Yeah.
Is that an Indian?
That's an Indian chief. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
1947. And you know, my dad had motorcycles, and so did my Uncle Henry, and Uncle Eddie had motorcycles.
For goodness
I know my
sakes.
dad had a Harley. I don't know what Ruth's dad had, but
I think
so,
it was a Harley also.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what's the deal with your Model T? What year is that?
This is a 1923 Model T Ford, and it's been reconditioned by us. We've rebuilt the engine and different things.
Oh yeah,
And
it runs pretty good, huh?
Yeah, it goes down the road.
Yeah, he's having a hard time keeping up with me, but
Yeah.
okay.
This is our dog Sage.
Oh yeah.
He has his goggles on so he doesn't get a fly in his eye when he's going down the road in the Model T.
Great. All right, let's go take a look at the meeting hall.
Take his hat off of him and
So here's the plaque. Twink, could you kind of read a little bit of that for us?
yeah, the plaque was put here by the E. Clampus Vitus group, and it mentions that the Olivenhain Town Hall was actually put into the historical register in 1993,
Wow.
and then this plaque was put in place in April of 2001.
Let's go take a look at the plaque on the other side and
Yeah.
Okay.
Twink, tell us more.
This is our original plaque that we had on the meeting hall. This was put here in 1973. I actually had this plaque made. Carly Taton and I walked into Tijuana, Mexico one time and had it cast out of bronze, and then we walked out with it and we erected this thing in 1973. It describes a little bit about the history of the meeting hall, that it was actually built in 1895. It was built as a 10-year anniversary. The colonists arrived here in 1884, and so in 1894 they decided to build a meeting hall, and it was finished then in 1895.
Oh, just before we go in, I got something really kind of interesting here.
All right.
Great.
When I was 7 years old, this was 1949. I remember when this was built.
Really?
Just, I don't know why. It just something. Anyway,
These concrete steps
the
here.
concrete steps were built. Yeah. So this thing I'll just remember for the rest of my life. Somebody had a bucket and they threw it in here. So somewhere down in here there's a bucket
Oh.
buried in the concrete.
Oh my
Wow.
So
My gosh.
yeah. So that's just for some reason I just continue to remember that.
Stuck in your mind.
Stuck in my mind,
Just
yeah.
a little guy. Interesting.
Over here we have the shanty, and I have something really interesting to tell you about this shanty, and we'll go in and we'll talk about it.
All right, let's go inside.
Just go on in.
Stan, thanks again for joining us today. You have so many interesting stories and history about this area. And even though we're cousins, I didn't grow up in this area like our dads did. And so I really find it fascinating to come and hear the stories. So tell us the little story you started outside about the shanty.
Yeah, that was one of the original shanties built for the colonists, and it came from Richard's Aunt Marie's house,
Yes.
her property, and
How
Yeah.
did it get here?
it was drugged down the road. My dad hooked it onto the back of his truck and put 2 planks underneath it, and they actually drug it right down the road, and they delivered it here without any problems.
What year was that, or approximately?
I believe that was in the early 70s, and it was, is that right, about the early 70s?
That
Yeah.
sounds about right. Yeah.
1972, 73.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you certainly couldn't do that today, could
No,
you?
you couldn't. No, that would be
Really.
that'd be really a problem.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so I got down here and it worked out really good.
Were either of you, as boys, involved? Did you see it?
Oh, I was here.
You
Oh,
were
yes.
here when
Yeah, I was one of the cars behind
Oh, you were.
the building as it was going down the road.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Well, this old meeting hall is just fascinating. I just love looking around, and I see there's a lot of interesting pictures, and you had pointed out the one to my right that's of our great-grandfather Silas working in a copper mine, and I understand he came from Pennsylvania.
He did. He came from Pennsylvania, and his great-grandfather Ezekiel Cole owned a grist mill, and a lot of the family members worked in this grist mill, and I guess times were tough, and Silas wanted to leave, and he moved to Nebraska, And then he moved to Illinois, where he met and married Mary Kent. And then he moved out here, and then they had several children, and one of the children was Clarence, and that was our grandfather. And then Clarence had 3 boys. Arthur was my dad, and then Henry, and then Eddie was your dad.
That's right.
And they grew up here in the valley.
This is the old schoolhouse, Ruth. This was actually not very far from where we are right now. It was just across the street. This was in, the school started in 1886 and was in operation up until 1942.
So I guess our fathers probably all went to that school, didn't
All of our fathers went to that school. Yes, they were educated in that little one-room schoolhouse. There were a variety of teachers. Lena Winters is shown in this picture, but there was a lot of other teachers. One of the teachers I remember taught there and also taught me when I was in school over in Encinitas. Yeah.
And what happened to the school? Did they tear it down? Or?
The school was moved to San Diego High School and used as a schoolroom there for about 30 additional years.
And what did they use?
And then after that, as a band room.
Oh, that's nice.
And then they tore it down, and that was the end of it.
Ruth, this picture is of a cook wagon. It was taken in 1911. And we have Gerhardt Cole standing here, Silas Cole sitting on the stool there.
And great-grandfather.
Yeah. And Charles Cole there on the horse. And cook wagons, this is what they were baling hay in this picture. And it took them more than a day to get the hay baled. So they would bring in a cook wagon so that the men would be able to eat, because it would take a number of days to get that much hay baled.
This is the John Berg store. It was actually just across the street over here. That's John Berg in the doorway, and that's his horse named Billy. And it was always an exciting day when you heard Billy coming down the driveway, because you knew John was going to deliver some goods that you had ordered from the store.
Oh, so he took them out to the farmers? They didn't have to come to the store to get them?
Both ways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, both ways. But this store was in operation from 1886 up until about 1911. It was finally taken over by the County of San Diego and used as a road maintenance building.
Oh.
And tore down and actually moved by them in about 1920.
Oh, look. Here's a picture of my dad, Ed Cole, playing the guitar, and your Uncle Herman on his, what is he playing, a saxophone?
I believe it's a saxophone, yeah.
And you said that there was a Mac and
Mac
Fred?
Brink is there playing the piano, and Fred Harvey is playing the violin.
And it looks like this was during the war. I see some uniforms and...
This was during World War II, and there was a convalescent home about 10 miles from here for the servicemen, and they would come here to the Saturday night dances.
Oh, that was nice. And this piano looks like it's possibly the one that's still in the hall here?
It's exactly the same one.
Is that right?
The piano you see in the picture is the one that's still in the meeting hall.
That's a great picture.
And notice that they're still using the lanterns.
Oh,
they didn't have electricity yet.
Wow, and this was in the early 40s and still no electricity.
Yes.
Great.
Olivenhain didn't get electricity until 1948. And this is the original piano that has been used in the meeting hall for many, many years, and is actually the one that's in that photograph there. And there's a lot of things that happened here in the meeting hall, and I'd like to just sit down and we'll talk about a few of those things. So we're here in the Olivenhain meeting hall, and the Olivenhain colonists, when they celebrated their 10-year anniversary here at Olivenhain, they built this building. And this building was built in 1895. And
okay. And you just recently had a new celebration, right?
In fact, we had another anniversary just this year. It was the 120th anniversary of the meeting hall, and There have been so many activities in this building. There have been dances, there have been parties, there's been weddings. It just goes on and on. The early dances that were actually done here were done by a club by the name of the Owl Club. Oh. And in fact, in a lot of those dances, Richard Scott was the secretary.
Oh, and he was at your celebration, the 120th.
He was there too also, yes.
Okay, I remember seeing him when I stopped by.
Yeah.
And you know, actually, Richard is the oldest person from one of the original families in the area.
So Twink, what were some of the activities they had at the 120th celebration?
Well, there was quite a bit going on that day. There were the pony rides for the young children. There was face painting. They had free penny candies that the Boy Scouts were passing around. And we had some guest speakers. Kristen Gaspar, the mayor of Encinitas, was here.
Very nice.
Gave us a proclamation. And we also had ice cream. There was an ice cream vendor here. And then the San Diego Costume Guild had people here in period costumes, which they were
just a nice thing.
Oh, it was very nice.
Yes.
It was a very spectacular event for the 120th.
They were singing and performing kind of throughout the afternoon?
We did. Yeah, we had a barbershop quartet that sang for the afternoon.
Very nice. Wow, that was very special.
It was.
Have many of probably the older and the newer generations that were involved in that.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, it was very nice. It was a fun event.
And nice that it could be held right here in this old hall.
Yes. In fact, Richard was inside the meeting hall, and he had a lot of pictures of the farming era at that time, and so there were people, he was giving a slideshow.
That's right, and I believe you were giving tours of the hotel as well as Richard doing the meeting hall. Great day.
Yeah, well, let's get up and we'll go over and have a tour of the hotel. I believe that is possibly where Theodore Penther, where the meeting was held, that did terminate the colony interests with Theodore Penther.
Wow, so that hotel was here back in 1884.
Yes, it was. Actually, the hotel was built in 1885. It's 10 years older than this building, than the meeting hall.
Well, this has sure been fun. I have some things to do. I'm going to go, and I will be back later.
Great, Stan. Thanks so much. We appreciate you coming.
Here we are here at the Germania Hotel. This plaque was placed here in commemoration of the hotel by the Encinitas Garden Club in 2008, and then the foundation was built as an Eagle Scout project and done in 2011. So let's go inside and see the hotel. Here we are inside of the Germania Hotel. This was built by Herman Becht for his wife and 10 children in 1885. So this was the only building of this type that was built in Olivenhain. The rest were more typical of the shanty that we saw earlier.
And it was quite spectacular.
Yeah, this was very spectacular. And I think, as I mentioned when we were in the meeting hall, this was probably where they held the meetings that terminated Theodore Penther as he was the organizer of getting the colony started. Yes, and his services were terminated here.
So, Twink and Richard, is this the original location of the hotel?
Actually, no. The hotel was moved here in 1982. It belonged at that time to Carl Tayton. He had sold it then to Dan Wigan, and Dan Wigan donated the hotel to the Olivenhain Town Council.
Really?
And the town council then raised the funds to move the building to this location and started restoration. Then the building kind of fell into a state of disrepair for a number of years, and about 13 years ago, I was in charge of the building's restoration. And
13 years you've been working on
Yes.
That's a lot of dedication.
We had an excellent contractor, John Knowles, and he has done the restoration work. This is some of the original wainscoting that was in here. However, the walls were redone. They had been lath and plaster, and now it's drywall. Also, during the restoration up in this
door header.
Right up in here?
Yeah, right up in there. There was a rat nest. A pack rat had taken one of Herman Beck's business cards and put it up there. And when we were taking this door frame apart, that business card came floating down, and it said Herman Beck, proprietor of the Germania Hotel.
Wow, so that was kind of like the rat that saved history.
Yes, definitely.
Fine.
Wow.
So it's just been a long process, and the building has come a long way, and now we can use it. The Boy Scouts use it for the haunted hotel, and we use it during the craft fair for vendors, and we also have it open for other events.
So these are fundraisers that help to continue with the restoration of this, and fundraisers that help with the meeting hall and maintain the grounds of the trees and everything.
Yes.
I have many fond memories of this area as a child, visiting my grandmother and your grandmother, Stan, Amanda Cole. She came here at the age of 2 with her family, the Canes. This area, I know, holds lots of fond memories for the new people that have come, as well as for all of you that have been here and kept the history alive. So I thank you so much for sharing your personal stories and the history of Olivenhain today with all of us. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in to Pace TV.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it was great. Really
Thank
nice
you, Ruth.
seeing
Good
you.
seeing
Good
you.
seeing you.
All right.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.